Sure. Everyone, my name is John Bradley. I'm the Vice Chair of the Eugene Police Commission. I'm sitting in tonight for our Chair, Amelia Folks, who is on leave today. This is the November 2025 Eugene, Oregon Police Commission meeting, and it is now called to order. First item on the agenda is Chair comments. Because we don't have anyone in the audience and we don't have anyone in the lobby for public comment, I'm going to keep this brief. First, I want to acknowledge the department's work yesterday in a tense and difficult situation. Chief, your folks presented as doing their outstanding job, and very much appreciate your comments afterwards. Also recognize, of course, that our thoughts are with everyone that was involved. Over the past month, we've also had significant input from the community on a perception, and according to our police auditor, a false perception that Eugene Police Department is involved in ICE operations, which they confirmed that they are not. And then, of course, also all our ongoing dialogue about automated license plate reader technology. And of course, we've got some additional work tonight that we'll do with that. So I had thought that we needed to prepare a little bit for a discussion about civility, but given circumstances, I think we're good to go on and move to the next agenda item. Thank you all for being here, and I'm glad to see you in person too. So next up, we have review and approval of the agenda. Are there any questions, errors, or omissions that you all can see?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Is there any debate? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by raising your hand. All opposed, please signify by raising your hand. Any abstains? Carries. Next up, we got public comment. We have anyone on the line now? All right. Well, given that we have no one in for public comment, we'll go on to the previous meetings recaps. So last meeting, we in October, we spent a lot of time on automated license plate reader technology, including privacy issues, possible federal access to data. We also welcomed two new commissioners, Commissioner Bertrand and Commissioner Donovan. So welcome to you both again. We had liaison updates, including report from the City Council and Commissioners Ye and Rose. Thank you for our councilors, Ye and Rose. Thank you for your input. Also, some input from Human Rights Commission related to the LPR technology. We had a discussion that was significant, robust. We also, around the policy itself, we've got some more tonight. We also reviewed policy 416 in response to calls. We have a couple changes that Sergeant Jordan had for us, not too the minor in nature, but we've got them. And there was also interest in returning to in-person or hybrid type meetings, and here we are. Any other?
There are now people in a lobby because it's been used, which you and we go back to the public.
Sure. Is there a motion to go back to public comment?
Let's do it.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any concerns, debate, anything like that? All right, let's go on back. It's unanimous. Here's.
If anyone would like to speak, please raise your hand.
For public comment, we'll have a duration of 2 minutes per individual. All full exception.
It's not.
That's all
I'm
right.
just surprised about that, okay?
All right. We'll move on to, so that's the recap for our October meeting. Next up, we have our approval of the October 9th minutes. Are there any errors, omissions, questions, revisions that you all would like to talk about? And Commissioner Brady, go ahead.
On page 8 of our packet, my comment just below the middle of the page. The last 2 sentences are not quite what I said. I think it would be easier just to omit them than correct them. No great harm done, but it's a little incoherent. I think I'm usually a little better. Maybe not.
So Jack, you're asking
Asking to drop
the
those 2
last
lines.
2 sentences.
I will get the rest.
Any other questions, concerns, errors, or additions? All right. Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the October 9th minutes?
Or move.
Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Very good, we've got a motion and a second to approve the minutes from October 9th. Is there any debate? Hearing no debate, we'll go ahead, clarification, Commissioner Rating, that will be, that motion to approve as amended.
Yeah.
Very good, yeah. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving minutes from October, please signify by raising your hand. All right, and that's unanimous. We don't need further discussion. Moving on to the next item, we have liaisons. And so I don't have a list of all the liaisons. I want to make sure I don't miss anyone. And so we have, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, civilian
start
review.
out with-
It'll be fast, because we haven't met since our last meeting. We meet next week, maybe. I have to look at the schedule, but it was better to stay on our typical meeting.
Oh, I see.
Thank you to everyone for your service, who also be veterans, and we did not.
And other liaisons other than. Oh, how about city council? Commissioner. Or Councilor Rose,
I know.
Councilor Gill.
I don't think anything police related has happened since our
Nothing
last.
police related. It's other than we had the honor guard come to Monday night's meeting to lead the pledge of allegiance. Very nice, very nicely done, very professional. Appreciate it.
Very good.
We don't have, we do have another.
Other liaison reports. I'll go last for the Human Rights Commission. We, of course, at our meeting in October, the Homelessness and Poverty Work Group has submitted a narrative for the larger HRC to consider regarding ALPR technology. That meeting will occur next week, where that wording will be considered by the larger HRC or commission. We have, on the 21st of December, we have an event coming up. It's the annual Unhoused Persons Memorial Day. It will be at the Farmers Market Pavilion inside. And of course, I want to extend the invitation. We hope to have good participation from the community and from Human Rights Commission. Will recognize those people who recognize our neighbors who've died on the street this past year. I think that's all that I have for HR.
Would the notification of that go out to all commissioners, so we know?
Yeah,
I'll
I'll send it. I'll send it on. Commissioner Raven. All right, move on to commissioner comments, and we'll start out with Commissioner Neal.
I have no comment. I'm glad to be in person.
Very good. Next up, Commissioner Raven.
Yeah, first of all, I understand that the Citizens Academy is going to be given again. And I would strongly urge every member of this commission who can find the time, I understand it's a commitment, But I cannot recommend it highly enough that if you wish to learn about the Eugene Police Department and see what it's composed of and what it does, you could hardly find a better way to do it. So I urge everyone to, if they can, I mean, it takes time and it was easy for me because I was retired, but, I recommend it. I hope you all send our thoughts and prayers to our chair, and hope she is well. And look forward to seeing her again. And that's about all I have to know.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bertrand.
Thank you. I have no comments at this time.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Dunnett. Okay, thank you. Councilor Groves.
Yes, I do have one. Speaking of the memorial for the Onion House, I mean, it's obviously a serious event and whenever we lose a member of our community, it's a tragedy. But I did want to point out that last year our mayor showed up and gave, I thought, a fitting speech, and she had a bowl of chili thrown on her. And to me, for anyone listening, I think that just degrades the whole process and the whole movement behind the message, and it gets lost. It sure irritates me. I'm always against any uncivil behavior, and I just wanted to point that out. Hopefully, we can behave a little better this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Commissioner Wilkes.
Thank you very much for stepping in and sharing the meeting. Appreciate that, Commissioner Bradley. I think one quick thing to share, I have an opportunity next week to go with a delegation to visit Seattle to learn more about their deflection program. Looking forward to that, seeing how they work with their officers and other agencies, and hope to learn more that I can share.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilkes. Commissioner Lund.
Thank you, Chair. First, I think we tried to have an out of scheduled meeting, and there was an effort and an email went out that with the title work session, and it definitely, just for future and for everyone, that did not get my attention. This email is not something that I'm like super on top of, so if I see a notification and said that I'm not expect. So if there ever were a need for something extraordinary, perhaps thought a call or something, and I, to my fellow commissioners, anyone who is really trying to reach me and wants to speak with me, but my number is easy to find online, and just please, now I'm gonna get it. Yeah, but, it would happen anyway. So, my comment is in the nature of, not political, but just that every day we're watching the display of force, the use of chemical irritants, the total lack of ability to handcuff people. We're being bombarded with images of federal policing. That's just not what we train our officers to do, expect from our officers, and they're watching it too. And so I want to just acknowledge that we're in a strange moment in policing in America. And it's really important from a local standpoint that we just stick with our values. And I hope that the majority, if not all of our officers, are having similar reactions to what we're seeing. And of course, we're seeing selective pieces and not understand how the media works, but we're certainly, our eyes are not seeing what we're seeing. So I want to just acknowledge that that's a pressure point on our police, there's rules of engagement that are clearly being ignored or not, that the things are softening. And I just want both to acknowledge and also to stress how important it is that we stick with our training and our values and our protocols for the things that we're seeing where that's all out the window. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councilor Gay.
I don't have any comments, thank you.
Councilor, and Commissioner Espinosa Blank.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for stepping into, and I love being in person. I have two comments. The one comment is the article in the Register Guard where Chief Skinner talked about how the licensed readers were very helpful in getting that ring of burglars that had hit Eugene and was on the I-5 corridor. I felt like that really shed a spotlight on the pros of that kind of technology. And as with any kind of technologies, there's always good and bad. But that was something that I think a lot of people could really take to heart and read that story and know that it happened here in town. And there's a lot of people who can put themselves in that situation and say, oh, that was helpful, that could have happened to me. So that was, I thought that article was really good. Alongside about the notifications that we're getting. Maybe it would be nice also if you could say, we need a quorum and how many people are needed and how many you have. So that if we just need one more person, I could make it happen in my life and I could jump in and make that quorum. So. Just kind of looking.
That concludes our commissioner comments. Except we have the chief's report. Chief, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bradley. Thank you all for coming here. First of all, I want to check in and see if the setup of the room is not nearly as intimate as it used to be, which is hard, but I think it's as close as we can get to being able for us to do the business that we need to do, allow for some space for some spectators to sit and for a place for them to come and do public comment while basically meeting my safety needs, quite frankly. Whether you feel safe or not, you're my guest here, and I'm gonna do everything I can to make sure that we can provide for people's safety as we move forward. So if you're comfortable with the way we set this up, then we'll just replicate it each week, and we can certainly adjust if you have some recommendations. I'm happy to give that to you. Thank you for the comments about yesterday's incident. Anytime law enforcement is involved in a deadly force incident, it's hard. We don't take those things lightly, and we understand the impact it has on our community and the impact it has on in this particular case, the suspect and any of the suspect's families as a result of this. And as if you would have seen my comments yesterday, this is a perfect example of what is expected of our law enforcement professionals to step in between what at that moment was total chaos with an individual with a modified shotgun menacing our community members and the innocent bystanders. And so our staff performed admirably, and unfortunately it ended the way it did. We hope to de-escalate and end it without any use of force at all, but unfortunately that was not the case. As you know, IDFIT will be doing the investigation. That's run by the district attorney's office. We have completely hands off on this, and we will let that happen. It's a criminal investigation because it is seen as such until the shooting is deemed as justified, and with a subject that is being cared for at local area hospital, likely there will be criminal charges against that individual. So we want to preserve the integrity of that case by not talking too much about it. But thank you for the comments, and thank you for the well wishes for everybody involved, not just our side, but the other participants in yesterday's events. Well, apologize for the attempt to get together to do an emergency work session. Understand that was predicated by a schedule where I was supposed to be at council on November 10th to talk about ALPR. And I was hoping desperately that police commission would have a chance to talk about the ALPR policy before I went to the city council. We were not able to pull that together. I understand that's, I think in the 7 years I've been here, we've never had one. So we don't, we kind of a swing and a miss on how we do that. And maybe in the future, hopefully we won't have to do it ever in the future, but in the future, we'll learn from that and we'll figure that out. So apologize for any inconvenience as it pertains to that. Police department is doing what police departments do. I don't know if we've publicized this yet or not, but our street crimes unit seized I don't know, 60 or 80 pounds of methamphetamine just recently. As a result of a great investigation out of street crimes unit. That street crimes unit is only here because of the community safety payroll tax. It is by the grace of our council and our staff and the taxpayers, both business and individual taxpayers, that we have the ability to stand up a 10-person street crimes unit that oftentimes is dabbling in narcotics trafficking, and in this particular case, this is the second largest seizure that we've had. You remember we had a seizure of 300 pounds a couple of years ago out of a storage unit here in Eugene that was associated with the same group. So drug trafficking and DTOs, drug trafficking organizations, are a real thing. Anytime you're on I-5, you are susceptible to that, and we continue to pay attention to those things and do those complex investigations and make those arrests where appropriate. And so street crimes did a great job. And again, thank you to this community and the Community Safety Payroll Tax for giving us an opportunity to be able to do that high level of enforcement that needs to be done. We are hiring like crazy, trying to. I mean, if you drive by our billboard outside, all you ever see is either "Go Ducks" or "Please come and work for us." We're running 5 or 6 processes a year. I just approved 4 or 5 new officers this last week. We've got graduation from the academy coming up tomorrow. And we're still down 22, 23 police officers. We're in a real interesting time where we have about as fast as we can hire them, we have that many that are reaching 25 or 30 years of service and stepping away. Had resignations just this week for people that are stepping out of the profession. And so it's kind of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So we're gaining ground, but we're not gaining ground at the pace I'd like to. And unfortunately, when you run an organization that is so heavily dependent on the human resources that we need to be able to do the job out on the street, you're not able to do everything that you would like to be able to do until we get fully staffed. So we'll keep plugging away, keep working on that, doing those types of things. So I'll stop there. Generally at this point, Vice Chair, there is usually a couple of questions for me, so I want to leave time for that. So I'll stop there and see if there's any other questions.
Go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you, Chair. I apologize for not commenting on the room during commissioner comments, but I noticed it right when I walked in. I like this setup. I think it's a very professional look. I think it's a lot safer. I never like people I don't know getting around behind that I can't see. And I just think this is a much better format. It always felt jumbled before, and especially that one night that was a little bit on the wild side. I didn't like how close people were able to get to our good captain over here. I was nervous for you.
Thank you.
So thank you for doing this.
Other questions? Go ahead.
I was wondering if you can share any, like, if there's been any demographic shift in the applicants for jobs at this particular department. Like, I don't know if that comes from recruitment or from outreach or from just like the pool or if it's sort of how it always do. Not that I know what it always has been. I'm just wondering if there's any shifts in demographics.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we certainly pay attention to that, and we have targeted recruiting to a variety of different demographics. I will say, with the exception of this last group that we did psychological and medical on, it's been a really good group of diverse applicants. The one thing that I've noticed is a good recent history of good gender diversity in our applicants. We're hiring more female officers in the last 18 months than it feels like we have for a while. What's interesting is, and it's hard to measure that against the past, because what's interesting is during 2021 and early 22, we couldn't get anybody hired. Nobody wanted to be a police officer. So now we're kind of coming out of that in 23, 24 and half of 25. And so I'm pleased with the applicants that we're getting. We've some Latino applicants, Polynesian applicants that are coming over from Hawaii, interestingly enough. I always question, come to Oregon from Hawaii. I mean, I'd rather go to Hawaii from Oregon, but they're all, and what's so great about it, Commissioner Neal, is that almost every single one of our applicants that we're hiring right now has some kind of connection to Eugene. It's not like just people showing up here, just giving it a shot, saying, this is the first place I applied. And that's one of the questions I ask in my chief's interview is, what connects you to Eugene, who's here for you, who can support you as you start this career, because that's really important. And they all have some story that connects them to Eugene, which I think is really, really important when you think about the services that they provide, is that they're connected to the community. So I don't have the exact numbers in front of me because we don't ask, quite frankly. But from my perspective, sitting in my office, interviewing every single one of the applicants that we say yes to, I'm pleased with the trajectory we're on.
Great. Thanks, Chief.
Other questions for the chief? Go ahead, Commissioner Brady.
Yeah, just if it ever comes up again that an emergency meeting is felt to be necessary, it would certainly ease my mind to know what the nature of the emergency is. It was kind of a frantic week trying to figure out what was going on. And, you know, our imaginations can run wild, but we don't have information. So it's always better to have some notion, but not a big deal. With the incident the other day, while it ended in a shooting, once again, we need some way to acknowledge what it means for an officer to attempt to de-escalate when facing someone carrying a 12-gauge shotgun. That is, what that represents is something I don't think gets enough appreciation. And I really wish there was some way we could point to that, because it's a consistent thing that happens in this department, that we end up having people arrested who are armed and no one gets a hold in them, usually. This was, you know, an extreme situation maybe, but that attempt before that is something that should have the greatest respect from all of us in America.
Thank you, sir. And I just end kind of my comments with, you know, one of the questions I was asked when I was doing the media engagement yesterday was, you know, were you able to attempt to use less lethal technology, which we certainly always try to use less lethal technology. In the case of a situation like this, being able to, the distance we have to keep our officers safe does not put us within effective range of less lethal technology. And so, you know, when you think about a shotgun, and I won't go into detail, but the way it was configured, it was designed, that weapon was designed to do a lot of damage in a short period of time. And so having officers attempting to de-escalate it from a distance was really important. So when you think about taser, ineffective, too far away, or any kind of extended range impact weapons, again, too far away. And so it's not always, less lethal isn't always the easiest application in those particular cases, but I understand people's concerns that we would at least attempt to do that in cases of.
Would it be within department policy if a suspect is there with a shotgun to use a less than lethal weapon on them? I would think that would be a pretty risky procedure.
Very, very risky. I can't tell you that it would necessarily be a policy violation, but we certainly would have judgment, you know, significant judgment issues if we had officers that were trying to solve a lethal force situation with less lethal. Now, and it's a case by case basis, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a completely different conversation if it's, say it's a knife.
Yeah.
Or something that doesn't have the destructive power that a shotgun, in this case, looked like a 12-gauge shotgun. So, yeah.
Any other questions for the chief? Hearing none, we don't have to take a approval, chief's report. Okay. Moving on, we have Sergeant Jordan and our first policy of the night, ALPR.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna take over a little bit. I mean, in the packet, you'll have the policies at 1204, ALPR. The only thing I would say is as I set this up before we open up for comments, is that, as you can imagine, it's a work in progress. It's inked up. We're in a landscape that's ever evolving around ALPR technology, not only here locally, but nationwide. What I appreciate about this particular commission is that we have done a nice job of kind of bifurcating the issue of the company that is the vendor, block safety, and the actual technology. And what we're talking about is the actual technology. And what I'm asking this commission to do is to do this work around the policy. Whether it ends up existing in the police department or not, I think it's a matter of time before it becomes an industry standard practice. I can remember years and years ago going through the same, maybe not this level of discussion, but same types of discussion when we had in-car video back in the nineties, and then subsequently body cam video and what that was capturing, and any other surveillance types of technology we have. And so I'd like the commission to still continue to do the work to develop a good, robust, and just and reliable policy for this organization in the event that the ALPR technology is a part of a crime fighting toolkit of ours now or in the future. So yeah, that's kind of why we're here today. Go ahead.
Point, okay, so, I can flag a few things that changed, I don't know if everybody got to look at the marked up copy and then the clean copy.
Can I just ask a question, Chair?
Yes.
Is the markup for this policy a markup that happened after this body approved this
Yes.
policy last month? Okay,
Yes.
all right,
Yep, these are new changes, so.
okay. And to my fellow commissioners, that's exactly why I said perhaps we didn't want to, but no worries, but, okay. And then I also just want to thank you. Tonight's packet is so chock full of red lines. A lot of work, and I'll talk to you about like maybe making it easier for you, but in this particularly right now, in this moment, this is hugely helpful, to me, and I hope to my fellow commissioners, and that's why I've been harping on the ability to see the changes. So sorry for the interruption. Thank you.
Okay, so some of the stuff was, that's changed is not necessarily substantive, just kind of some, especially in the beginning there, purpose and scope. But I think the things you're gonna wanna look at, if you have not looked at the pack yet or the markup copy, under ALPR operation, if you go 1204.3 and then go to the next page, we talked about role-based access controls to ensure only trained and authorized people can access the system. Making sure that that was in the document here saying that you have to have a case number or a CAD number or some searchable investigative reason to access the ALPR data. And then we added in this part C, audit logs to track access and usage of ALPR data. Further down, we talked about kind of what is the official and legitimate law enforcement business. And it's expressly shall not be used for the purpose of immigration enforcement. So that's in there. I forget if that was in there previously. It may just be reworded, but it's definitely in there at this point. So it also goes deeper in the subsections 1, 2, and 3, what it shall and shall not be used to track or to investigate. And so you can see those details there, talking about how we will not use that data in a way that would be a crime in the state of Oregon, because we know that would be. And so I don't know if anybody has any questions about those. Let's see. The rest of that is kind of just, oh, go for it. Sorry.
Role-based access controls, does that mean that in order to get access, you have to be authorized and have the right reason and have filled out paperwork and have gone to the right person? What does it, is that what that means?
You have a good answer.
Yeah, it's basically outlining in policy what was already in place, but it's saying that all users have to have a role. So there's really only like somebody that can do searches and then an administrative function, and then it's clearly articulated.
I was wondering if that was technical language or meant something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
And maybe, I'm hoping maybe some attorneys in the room can help answer this. In section E1 through 3, I guess my concern about being specific, which I think these are fine specifics, is if it leaves anything out, is that in a policy then like allowing for room for interpretation of what it's not covering. I guess I see these as really specific concerns that the community might have, but it's almost so specific that there may be other things that it doesn't quite get at that I don't know, we have concerns about that it wouldn't be used for, but could be susceptible. I don't know. I just, it feels very skillful. And I wonder if there's concern from anyone else who knows these things better than when you go up for trying to interpret this.
I mean, it basically says,
Yeah.
it basically says can be used, shall be used for official and legitimate law enforcement business. So that's the
that's-
grant of authority, like
Yeah.
they can use it for that. And then
There's some specific.
1 through 3 are specific limitations of, and are you saying, are there other limitations?
Well, I
that
guess
they're not.
when there's 1
enacted?
through 3, do you imagine like, does that get added to over time? Does it become too narrow?
I mean, I
It's a big
suppose if
thing, the
a,
thing
if
that
a
we should-
new exploitation of this system was discovered in a way that wasn't contemplated when 1 through 3 were drafted, the department would be free to add it and we would be free to recommend it
Yeah.
if we thought about, but
Yeah.
I think this is responsive,
To
speculating now, but the 1 through 3 are responsive to all the concerns.
Yeah.
But the opening sentence is the grant of that this,
What it is.
policies, allows.
Yeah, I guess, the one that gets, I don't know, kind of makes me concerned is, not be used to specifically target this number 1, movement of vehicles traveling to or from specific facilities. Which I think. Is that always a crime? To be able to track someone
That's,
from facilities?
no, it's not actually a crime, because the crime is using it for immigration purposes, for us to
Okay.
cooperate with
Yeah,
the federal government there, but this is because, of the concerns around,
not only to track people going to
Abortion bans.
reproductive, yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I get that, and I guess, is there a situation in which you would want to track someone going from a healthcare facility to somewhere that is not related necessarily to that concern?
I mean, not that I'm aware, but.
Well, I mean, I think when you think about specifically tracking, in order to do that, you'd have to specifically have a camera set up at the entrance of the health.
Right, yeah.
And I think what our intent with the locations is, as they've been mapped, is that they are on major ingress egress streets, not in our neighborhoods, and not specifically pointed to the ingress egress of healthcare facilities. And so
Yeah.
I think this is trying to be prescriptive in the sense that we won't set up cameras
At
in a,
hospitals
in
or
a,
healthcare
yeah, at a
clinics
hospital
or, yeah.
or a reproductive clinic to see who, the comings and goings.
Mhm.
Now, one might make the case, well, there's a reproductive clinic on that road and
Mm-hmm.
and 3 blocks away, this car crossed that, that's a little bit more of a difficult one to address. But
Yeah.
specifically, we wanna be able to call out that we're not gonna be having cameras in and around specifically those areas for tracking.
Yeah, I guess the reason it comes up for me is just 2 and 3 are specifically about people, like it's about an action of protecting a certain class of people or a certain, legality of, a certain class of people. Whereas the first one is about place. So the place makes me feel like it's vulnerable to, I don't know, risk or something.
Yeah, I think our intent was trying to be responsive to what we're seeing as being kind of nationwide concerns around reproductive health and immigration. Those seems to be the 2 that have kind of risen to the top.
Makes sense.
So,
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So, I'm gonna just kind of, get into the lane first. My background is in it's a medical background, and we have confidentiality, and if that ever got breached, we had to tell the patient. And with the credit cards and the data that's held, if it ever gets breached, they have to tell you that there's been a breach in the system. I'm wondering if, because there's so much data involved with this, that if it ever was breached, or if it was ever hacked into, or that information was given out to somebody who wasn't in law enforcement, is there anything that law enforcement needs to let the public know that that's happened?
well, I mean, we certainly, if we had if in fact we had a breach, which, to my knowledge, there has not been a breach of the system as it stands, now, but if we certainly would probably make that notification, but understand, we're talking about here's my opinion, and I'm not an attorney, but here's my opinion based on a lot of years of experience. We are taking photographs of government license plates on open government roads. There's no expectation of privacy. Everything that we're capturing in data is a matter of public record. people could, and that's one of the vulnerabilities, right? Somebody could file a public records request here in Oregon and likely get, hey, I want to see all the cars that crossed this intersection between this date and this date. And if they wanted all that raw data, all those pictures, they could get that. I mean, we can't claim that it's our data. That it's our data to hold. We're the custodians of the data, and by virtue of the governmental interest, we're creating these records, or we're asking these records to be created, and not give up that information if asked. So could somebody get that data if with the right types of public records requests? Likely the answer would be yes. The hard part about that is you never know if somebody's asking for those for nefarious reasons or not. And so there is a vulnerability there. And I always, think about the instance where maybe a victim and their abuser is trying to identify whether or not that car has been crossing a certain intersection. So I'm not sure we'll ever know that, but I do think that it's a matter of public record. The data is a matter of public record. We have a recent case in Washington State that has ruled that, and while Washington State has different public records laws than Oregon does, I think that my experience has been, having been a chief in Washington State, is that they're similar enough that I think we would also find that it would be a matter of public record down here.
Go ahead, Commissioner Long.
Just on a follow-up to that, correct me if I'm wrong, that is an evolution, a change of position. Because I'm recalling that when we started this conversation, when we were informed that the cameras had been installed, that this was data that's protected and nobody's gonna see it, and it wasn't available to attorneys that are doing car accidents and want to check the route from the bar to this, or the abuser that wants. And so that is am I correct that is, because I know about the case?
Yeah.
It's certainly not settled.
Yeah, no, it's certainly not. I think, I guess it's to be determined. I mean, that's just my opinion. I think that, when we're gathering data, and we're gathering data that's ours, and we're the custodians, I mean, there's very few data points that we gather in a police department that aren't matter of public record. There's probably maybe some provisions that would provide for redaction or non-disclosure. I just don't know.
Well,
what that would be.
investigatory, but if you were on a specific investigation and looking for data, you could probably keep that confident. But you're just saying the raw data, the public, your position may have evolved, and I'm not judging, I'm just saying this is a change. I'm just saying to our fellow commissioners, when this started, this was data that was secret data, basically, not for public consumption. And now we're kind of all awakening to the idea that the raw pictures just that exist as being held by a custodian that's a public body are probably available to people that are interested.
Yeah, in fairness, I don't remember making a blanket statement that this is all super secret data. I don't, you can't in one hand say that there's no expectation of privacy, and then say the police department has expectation of privacy around all the data.
I could be wrong. I'm not pointing a finger.
But I do think as I'm answering the question, I think it's important to note that we have a recent case out of Washington. As I said, everything's starting to evolve a little bit. I think we have a recent case out of Washington that would suggest that the data is a matter of public record. To your point, I think it'd be a case by case basis, much like our body cam video. Body cam video is data that we collect that's a matter of public record, but there are some requirements around who can request it. And so likely, I think you'll see probably some legislative fixes around this in the not so distant future, much like we had with body cam footage as well.
Thank you.
Jake, do you have any other thoughts on that, or have you seen anything in the industry that you've been talking with the vendor or any of that stuff?
No, the information out of Washington's really new. I just saw it today. So
This
happens. I do remember the conversation back in July. We were talking about data security and not releasing it to the federal government. I
It
think
was you were here that
But-
day.
We were talking about legitimate law enforcement purposes and the use of the data, and so this information coming out of Washington is evolving, and I'm sure it's not done, and so I don't really have anything more to add to that, other than it's gonna come up on a case by case basis.
I think the nuance might be the difference between people accessing the data and us responding to a Freedom of Information Act or something like that. We at least have the control over the redaction and the better understanding, you know, why you want the data and being able to challenge that if we need to. But yeah, certainly not a open public database. They would go in and be able to grab their own stuff. Yeah.
Seems like a high.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, two things. One on section E 1 through 3. Would I be correct in understanding that E, stating the general case, covers a lot of ground, and that 1 through 3 covered 3 specific aspects of that ground, but are not meant to be inclusive of everything that would fit there? Am I correct in that? That just these 3 were hit because people had squawked about these 3?
I think I could say yes, that is pretty much the intent. Truly, it is a living document, so of course, if something else came up that we wanted to ensure
Yeah.
was kind of captured in here, we would add that to the document as those
But
situations.
that much more is
Nothing.
restricted by the
Yeah.
first.
Yeah,
Good. The second point was regarding, because I'm thinking about this, public request for information from the license plate readers. I want, for some reason, to know whether or not someone was driving in Eugene in a certain area at a certain time. I would then have to file a request for information. How long would that process typically take? Because I know when I have filed Freedom of Information Act request with the federal government, it took about a year. And if I'm asking about, you know, was my ex driving between here and there at this time? By the time I get a response, that information will all have been wiped long since. Because I filed that request, would that period that I asked it to cover be held? Or, I mean, it looks to me like the way to exploit this would be really, really iffy.
Well, I would say that we don't have a system, since we're not dealing with it yet, we don't have a system set up. You know, when the system before it was suspended was a 30-day override. And so certainly any request for information would have to be within that 30-day window, otherwise we wouldn't even have the data. I don't know to what extent we would, upon receiving the request, we could hold the data until we were able to get it, or if it just continues to go. So I don't know the answer to that. And it's something that we have to contemplate on. Would a mere request automatically trigger a saving of the data? Because the way the data, if I'm not mistaken, the way we're saving data when we need it beyond the 30 days is by grabbing the data and moving it into evidence.com, which is our evidence storage space, because it's a matter of chain of custody and custodial evidence. This is not that.
Yeah.
This request is not that. We're not going to be probably storing that stuff in our evidence.
So
storage
it
data.
sounds real iffy.
So I would say we would have to contemplate how we would navigate that. And I'm sure the courts have an opinion on whether or not we would save it somewhere pending or you know, fulfilling that. So
Commissioner Bertrand?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. I had a couple of questions. First, specifically, Chief Skinner, regarding to what you had mentioned a little bit earlier regarding the, public record of certain ALPR, evidentiary data. I guess my question is it possible, and I know that you're not a lawyer, of course, you're not of here, but would it be possible to have certain data points or data sets from the ALPR to be exempted? Such as I know with Washington State, RCW 42.56. I know some of that detail, some data that can be exempted. Would it be possible here with ALPR?
yeah, I think so. I mean, we went through that exercise with body cam with ORS exempting certain parts of the body cam from being released. I think that the state of Oregon has not probably contemplated this, to the point where they've legislatively addressed what's been exempted, but I'd be shocked if there wouldn't be some circumstances that would be exempted from just a full public records type of request.
Okay. And I actually had a second question here. You mentioned a little bit earlier regarding I believe that's section E, um I believe E1 regarding targeting and tracking movement and vehicles traveling to and from healthcare facilities. You touched on it a little bit earlier about not having necessarily cameras set up in those entrances, for example, right? So I guess that kind of partially answers my question, which is that how on a day-to-day level would you prohibit such tracking of movement of vehicles? I guess maybe to say it better, I know that the license plate reader would read the license plate. That information, I'm assuming, would automatically be stored in some sort of, the data would be stored itself. So would some sort of auditor of that data um, go through and say, hey, this information we don't need because it was interest inside the hospital? How would that work on a day to day? I guess I'm curious.
Well, I think that what we hope to accomplish through the strategic location of the actual fixed cameras, that they're in locations that are likely and obvious and strategic ingress egress major arterials within the city, and not specifically announcing the comings and goings of a specific business or a specific location. That's why you have so many of them throughout the city, is because from an investigative standpoint, we'll take the Asian American burglaries as an example. The only reason we were able to find the car we were looking for is because the ALPR system hit on a couple of different locations, and then the likely path of travel that it didn't hit on that other location. So we knew that we kind of had the car that crossed a couple of locations and then didn't cross
Mm,
a continued location going down that road. So we assumed it must have turned off. And so then we start saying, okay, where is the likely, and we had, I don't know how many patrol cops that night, canvassing an area thinking, okay, we know we vectored in this area until we found this car sitting at the Airbnb after they had gotten back from, or before they had gone to Salem to commit their burglary, and that's how we kind of broke that case. So I think it's through the strategic location of these cameras that it won't ever announce a specific location somebody's either coming or going to, just a general area. And then we have to do good investigative work to actually find the vehicle. Unless it's actively hitting those things and we're actually able to catch up to the places that it's actually hitting or crossing those intersections or those moments in the roadway, like a stolen vehicle, for instance, that's trying to get out of town, we have the ability to kind of catch up to them there. But it will never tell us exactly where somebody has gone or not gone as far as a starting and stopping point.
gotcha. I appreciate it. So essentially what you're saying, kind of like you said, investigating some deductive reasoning. I was reading and doing a little research here myself here from the last meeting. And I know one of the concerns that some citizens have mentioned is regarding having that data and basically predicting people's behavior regarding you or after using that data and predicting their behavior. But I think also is listed, and I think you mentioned as well, that the idea is to only have that data for 30 days, and therefore it would not be able to go ahead and create any sort of predictive models. So that makes sense.
Yeah, and I would just say that, and I know that this is a nuanced thing I'm gonna say, but what we're predicting is vehicle behavior, not individuals' behavior. We have no idea who's driving the vehicle.
Okay.
And so, and there's no connectivity to any Oregon Department of Motor Vehicle database to suggest who the registered owner is, unless we go and do that work independently of the ALPR data. But most likely, we're looking for a specific reason, a specific vehicle for a legitimate law enforcement purpose. And so we want to see the behavior of that vehicle, which is just one piece of many of an investigative process.
I appreciate. Good to note that it's vehicle behavior, not individual behavior. Thank you.
Commissioner Lund.
Thank you, Chair. On this issue of the public records, and the data storage. When we had the Guardian camera trailers and they had like a 60-day wipe, and then when we talked about, well, if someone wants to make public, I even think we put in the policy, that it gets held, you know, and I have a feeling that the law, the courts or whatever would come down on the side of if a legitimate request is made in a timely manner in the 30 days, it will not fly as a excuse that, oh, we couldn't get to it until day 35. I mean, if you preserve it, but that really begs that unless it's very specific, a request for like camera number 11 and camera number 13, you've identified a total loophole where if someone just puts in a public records request for all the flock cameras, that it gets preserved, the 30 days will be meaningless. And so I do believe that attention, whether this is a city attorney or whoever, you know, but a real attention should be paid to the issue of not letting requests have data, you know, someone just be able to blow the deadline, the 30 days. So, but a specific request for a geographic area for a narrow time window minimizes that risk. So it just occurred to me that is a big issue.
One of the interesting fixes on the body cam legislation around public records was that the people could not request body cam footage of things that they weren't involved in. And so what I could see is maybe the request come from somebody that said, I want to know how many times my vehicle crossed this intersection. And those might be much more legitimate requests than just somebody that's, you know, wanting it for nefarious reasons or criminal reasons. So I think there's probably going to be some
Or
opinions.
predictive, or to create predictive models from a private standpoint, you know.
Yes, I'm going back to Commissioner Rady's and comment and a little bit of yours too. Going to it says on there, an ALPR shall only be used for official and legitimate law enforcement business. So somebody like Commissioner Rady couldn't say, oh, my ex-wife was going on this street, I'd like to know, I want footage of that, because it's not legitimate law enforcement, right? I mean, that seems like that's the basis of where you're going with this whole entire thing.
That's their use of it. That's not the public's use. If it is a public record, and I'm sorry to engage in conversation, I'm not able to, I really am sorry. But yeah, I believe that this is what restricts their behavior, but if it truly is a public record, then the chief just identified that in the body cam, the legislative fix included some limitations on when and what you can request, but absent that, an individual would not be restrained from trying to find out where the X was.
Michelle, did you?
I do have a comment, but it's on 1204.4, and I want to make sure that we're ready to. Okay. And this is under D of 1204.4. In this, it says, I guess the word I'm struggling with is may. And therefore may be purged unless it has become or is reasonable to believe it'll become evidence. My understanding is that the word should be will be purged. Or is there a possibility that you would just, it may be kept? So I'm hoping for a little clarification there.
Well, I mean, that's a good comment and exactly why this commission exists is because I think the police department is agreeable to hearing recommendations on things such as may versus will, and being prescriptive on that, you know, or shall. Will and shall kind of mean the same thing in ORS for us. So I don't have any comment. Jake, do you have any comments on that? Yeah.
I think it's a good point.
Okay, perfect. And I want to respond to that. I think that actually goes along with the safeguards we built in with audits, which where we have it, the captain will ensure that a monthly audit of that data is completed and somewhere in here that it's purging on the prescribed schedule. So not only will we ensure we're storing for no more than the prescribed period, there will be a secondary look at, okay, yes, in fact, it is purging. I no longer access data beyond that. And let's see, so that's a good change. The rest of the changes that are in here, we added in some more, under accountability and safeguards, we did add in some more stringent access protocols in terms of two-factor authentication. It's stuff that's very similar to our CGIS, kind of, data security. And, we also added in that we will opt out of the ALPR national lookup tool and ensure that that's an ongoing practice reflected in the contract. And the chief can speak to the contract stuff more. The only other thing, next page under E, that's the one that shows that we will do these audits of the purposes and users that are accessing our data. We will do those on a quarterly basis. So not only are we auditing for the purging and making sure the data is being stored properly and purged appropriately, we will ensure that all of the legitimate law enforcement reasons and case numbers that need to be entered, things like that, are being done as they're prescribed here. And then last section is data access. And this talks about who can access the data in our cameras, basically, from our cameras. Obviously, we have existing, you might want to talk about this one, Chief.
So, this last one, really is a policy discussion, for us around the breadth of which, it's an interesting piece of technology. It's a force multiplier. It becomes more effective the more data you have, certainly. This last piece just talks about who we're gonna share this with. We can, everything from nationwide all the way down to the state of Oregon, down to Lane County only, all the way down to Eugene only users. So really, it can be a policy discussion about how strict we want the ALPR data to be used. Interestingly enough, there's some information coming out of Denver right now that has some interesting restrictions that I think could be a model for where we go, up to and including actual civil penalties for the vendor in the event that there is that they're not following the rules. So really, that's what it comes down to is the who do we want to, how closely do we want to restrict the data, or who can access the data outside of Eugene Police Department.
So there are two tiers within this, which I'm sure if you read, you saw. Essentially, we have people who we have data sharing agreements with, and interagency agreements with that can access directly. And I think right now this is limited to a very small, potentially, well, I don't know if we actually have any of those in place at this point, but what we envisioned were local.
Yeah.
And then we have other scenarios where, say, somebody in an agency in Washington reaches out to us, and they said, hey, we have this, we know this person might be in your area in this vehicle. So we may be able to plug in that data for them to look for that vehicle, but we're not going to give free access to our system in that regard. And so we would be able to verify their legitimate law enforcement purpose for the purpose of putting that data in the system, period. So those are the two kind of parts there.
Voice and training. Yeah, what would be the problem with, and I'm not saying it's a good idea, I don't know. What would be the problem with saying nobody gets direct access to our data. You all come to us, say, we've got this guy, we think he's in your area, or may have been in your area, would you please look and see? Because it's going to be the Eugene Police will have to go down and find him then if it turns out a hit. And that would remove the whole question of anybody getting into it without it going through the department. The same process that we use. And it would, what am I missing? Why wouldn't that work?
Well, I can start, I can say
Yeah.
that's certainly a possibility, Commissioner, and it certainly could work that way. I think the nature of this, when this, even when it got expanded to nationwide and why it was intriguing to law enforcement at first, and I'll just say that the ability to share cross jurisdictionally was intriguing. Because we know that people that commit crimes in one area will do it in another area, cross boundaries without telling the police that they're in the area and stuff, so. Those were all tools that we thought were useful and everything else. Then we started to see the issues with that, especially out of state and then even in state. And so controlling access to who accesses the data, it is a possibility to do it just solely with this. A lot of what we've seen that's worked across in other areas of the country and other areas of the state is at least having a regional approach to it, like with a Springfield PD and a LCSO and Eugene, because we are all so closely connected and our crimes are happening back and forth, in a close proximity in time, and the same criminals committing crimes and stuff. And so that probably be the best case scenario, but it is a possibility to do that.
Yeah, I'm not entirely clear. So let's say a department in Tennessee is looking for someone and they developed information they might be in Eugene and they're driving this car. They request from the Eugene Police Department, would you take a look in your system and see if you've got this guy there? That's not the department in Tennessee punching into the system and accessing the data without asking please and explaining why. If we restricted, say, to Lane County or to Oregon or to just West Coast, would that preclude the department in Tennessee calling up and saying, we want this guy, you got him?
It doesn't preclude anybody from calling us and asking us to look in our system on their behalf. But what it does do is it makes it incumbent on us to justify the legitimate law enforcement reason for us to look for that.
Which they would give you.
Which they would give us and we would vet. And we would say, okay, that's a legitimate law enforcement purpose. The majority of those types of things, in my experience, are we use missing and endangered all the time. That's, somebody in Tennessee has an elderly parent that's walked away here. There may be, their agency may call our agency and say, hey, we've got a walk away or a drive away in this case. Can you be on the lookout for this person? We do it. The real value of this tool is not whether or not they're here. I mean, that's part of it. The real value of this tool is once we put it in the system to look for it, especially if we put it on the hot sheet, is that our officers and only our officers, because we're in our jurisdiction, will get the real-time hits on where that vehicle is crossing so that we can actually interdict that vehicle for whatever reason, whether it's for criminal reasons or safeguarding. So we're still doing all the work on behalf of everybody else that maybe wants to look for something that's going on in the city. And again, all that data we're collecting is meaningless until we ask it to be meaningful. And that would be our job, is to legitimize why it would be meaningful.
So what would be excluded if we chose just share with Lane County, say? Would that mean every agency in Lane County could tap directly into the system without going to the department first?
So we can do it one of two ways. We can, if we just share with Lane County agencies, which right now it would only be the ones that have the agreement. So it would be Springfield and Lane County. Florence.
Lane County Sheriff's Office, Springfield.
They all have that. So it would be, they would have the ability to, if we did that, they would have the ability to look at our data. But what would happen is it would show up on our audit though, that they looked at our data and they would have to put in their reasons. But if we wanted to restrict it where we said the only people that are legitimizing the reasons for looking at the data are Eugene PD, then we would have it be Eugene PD only, and everybody else that wants to see the data would be on a request only basis.
Thank you. That's very clear. Mr. Blair.
Can I just ask a couple clarification points? When our cameras were operating, how was it set up? Who had access? Was it all Oregon agencies? Was it no agencies? How was it?
I'm talking about kind of the evolution of it going. from there.
Yeah, so when they first started getting, when they first, cameras were first implemented back in early May, I think it was. We were in the nationwide lookup, we had opted into that originally, and as we started hearing more public concerns and we started looking at the vulnerabilities of it, and we wanted to make sure that we restricted access. In the first, I think it was July 1st, we stopped the nationwide lookup and we limited it to Oregon agencies only. So it was about 18 Oregon agencies that they were in, all of agencies that had the flock system. So, and then, yeah, so then when the cameras were deactivated, then we stopped sharing with everybody. So that's kind of the evolution of it. So.
That's helpful. And then at this point, because we don't have cameras operating, do you feel like it's not the right time to identify who exactly would have access? Like, are we keeping this limited to Oregon agencies and the policies as written? Or are we not identifying anybody because they're not operating?
Well, there's no work going on. I mean, I'm guessing, I don't know how long they've been turned off now.
October 14th.
So we're coming up on a 30-day where there's not gonna be any data left in that 30-day window. So there's probably very limited data that's left sitting in there. I don't think we've had any, I mean, have we had anybody access what data is just sitting there, not being grabbed? I mean, I don't think so. So I think part of what my hope was with this group is to get a good sense of how strict you want this to be. If ALPR technology is important, as an important tool for your police department to fight crime, then weighing the pros and the cons and the vulnerabilities and the community sentiment, is there a level of restrictiveness that we could take this down to that still puts some measure of the tool in our hands to do the work that we need to do without it feeling too broad? And so I think from this group is part of what I'm hoping to get recommendation for. I mean, I certainly have a public safety recommendation, which would be at the very least Lane County, because Springfield and the county both have systems that we could leverage from, certainly. But I would also say on the other side that I think that we don't need to be nationwide lookups.
Okay, Commissioner Bertrand.
Thank you so much. And Chief Skinner, you actually kind of answered, I guess, maybe part of my question, which was, in my belief, I do think that it would be better for Lane County, at least, to have direct access to that. But a follow-up question, I guess, to it is that if, say, for example, Springfield PD did not have direct access and they were to go ahead and make that request to Eugene PD, I know it's hard to say right now, but how long would you anticipate that it would take to basically answer any sort of questions or to give them access, or if they wouldn't have direct access is I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, administratively, it would take time. I mean, we'd have to get the request. We'd have to make sure somebody's available to do that.
Mhm.
We'd have to better understand their legitimate law enforcement reason for wanting access or for wanting us to look. And then we would get on the portal and actually do that. I'm not sure I could, unless Captain Burke can give me a sense of how quickly we think we could do that. It'd be on case by case basis.
I think it's a case by case, and if I'm fully understanding, the question is if there wasn't access outside of Eugene, how long would it take to like execute a search on behalf of another agency? Is that kind of the question?
That's correct, because I essentially, I think to the chief's point is that it would make sense to me for Springfield, for example, to have direct access because they're right next door. It wouldn't make sense to me that they would have to go through that whole process and it would defeat the purpose of legitimate investigation techniques.
Thank you, Commissioner, for the clarity. Yeah, I think it could just take minutes. I mean, it's a process that we've done for years, whether it was LPR or other data sources. And it's our responsibility to vet anybody that's making the request for the information. So it's our responsibility to ask to verify, is it a legitimate law enforcement purpose? Once we get that information, then we did make the decision if we can help that agency or not help that agency. So it could be a matter of minutes, it could take longer depending on the phone tree or communication gaps.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks. So I think this is a really helpful discussion for me at least. I would love to be able to trust everyone in Lane County because there's only so much we can vet, right? At a certain point, you know, I don't expect you guys to have a crystal ball, right? You can only do what you can do to figure out, and it takes take time. My concern is not so much like, I would like to be able to trust those other departments as much as I trust EPD, but they don't all have the oversight that we do, right? We are in a very unique situation here in Eugene with the system that we have created, which I think makes all of us feel very comfortable. That should something happen, there is a system to deal with that, but not every community has what we have. I would be more comfortable with a community further away that had a system more like us accessing than my neighbor who doesn't, right? Because you know, we're gonna be doing audits, that's fantastic and I think important, but you know, is Springfield gonna be doing that? And you know, are we gonna be able to audit their things and are we gonna be able, you know, do you see what I'm saying? If we were able to address that issue somehow in here, I think that would go a long way.
I think that, Counselor Gay, thanks for the comment, because I mean, it is, we see this all the time, right? We went through this during our managing of protests too.
Mm.
Having other agencies come into our town and help us manage protests that have no oversight. And we're always concerned, and the question is, you know, to what extent can we, you know, supervise them? And they're doing and being able to do that. Really, the only way to do that is that, if it's locked down to Eugene only, and they reach out and ask for a lookup, and that we vet that lookup, then it becomes essentially our behavior that's gonna be scrutinized. If we don't do it, if Springfield calls us and asks us for something, and we don't do a good job of vetting that and doing it for the right reasons, then the responsibility is with that officer that did that lookup without doing the work they're doing. That's where the oversight comes into play, right? That's really the only way we do that, or we access this to Eugene only and just tell all of our neighboring agencies, don't bother asking us for any of the data, because we don't do that. So to kind of get you to where we want to be with the good kind of oversight that we have here in Eugene is that we have to get to a place where it ends up being our actions that are being scrutinized, accessing the ALPR data, not Springfield's actions, because you're right, we don't have any authority over whether or not they do that. Now, I would suggest if they had access to our data and they were not doing it for the right reason, then we would just cut them off. You know, I mean, you gotta be a good actor to continue to access data, but that might be the only way.
Thanks, to that, Counselor. Also, part of this 1205.5, when it talks about a data sharing agreement, it's a safeguard as best that we can outside the system itself, where we just click a button and give access if they ask for it or something, or after we vetted it. But a data sharing agreement is a little more comprehensive, and we're requesting the agency head signs that, which is acknowledging that they need to comply with the same restrictions that we have for the use of the system. And so that's one of the things that we've developed in addition to any of the block or LPR access points and stuff. And so, but yes, I agree. There's the big thing when we look at audits and like reasons for the search and everything else is we really narrowed the focus down to like, we want case numbers, CAD numbers, easily identifiable, if I'm doing an audit or anybody's doing an audit of the system, to look through it and be able to go back and say, oh, it was used for this reason, okay, and then move on. We need to be able to have the same compliance from other agencies that are accessing our data. So,
Commissioner Wayne?
Thank you. Middle ground might be data sharing agreements with other flock neighbors within Lane County only that are reciprocal, that Eugene police officers have the same privileges that their officers have to access flock, with the protection of the data sharing agreement, and the non-flock communities make requests when they want to see our data, and, you know, it just is a compromise kind of to Counselor Yea's concern.
Commissioner Williams?
So if I remember correctly, in July, we moved to just Oregon agencies that we were sharing with. And I'm hearing a lot of conversation about limiting it to Lane County. And my understanding was we limited it to Oregon because we share the same government rule of a sanctuary state. I guess I'm looking for your recommendation, Captain Burke, Chief Skinner, and Sergeant Jordan. What do you think is the right geographic setting here? Is it Lane County? Is it just UPD? Is it the state? What do you think?
Here's the deal. This is an important tool for law enforcement. I mean, there's just, I mean, it's the demonstrated, in the short amount of time that we've been using it, it's demonstrated effectiveness. It cannot be disputed. And I'm sensitive to the concerns this community has around a variety of things. And I appreciate whether it's council, well, not so much some of the comment we heard, but the council has been great about trying to bifurcate the trust with UPD versus the other trust issues, and if they trust us. I'm not going to be in a position where I'm going to put Thrive an ultimatum and say, well, if I don't have this statewide, then just, it's not, you know, then it's not even worth having. Because then I'd be a hypocrite, because you've heard from me over and over again that there's victims of crime that are being served by this technology. So if by restricting it down really, really far gives us this tool, then we're still going to serve victims of crime here in Eugene. So that's a very political way of not answering your question. But you know, it's a force multiplier, right? Of course, the more data we have, the better we have. But having said that, our ability to go look in other jurisdictions could be valuable, but we could still reach out to them and ask for their permission for something that's important. They could reach out to us and ask for permission for something that's important, and we would initiate that request for them. So, Commissioner Wilgus, I would say at this point, with this being a new piece of technology, that I would say wherever we can get to at least some level of comfort with utilizing this crime fighting tool, and then just existing in that space for a period of time to get some experience. And then we can have the discussions about whether or not we can move it out and out and out and out. But I would say that to be responsive to this community, if we can get to yes, it would be getting to yes on something that felt a little bit more restrictive than maybe where we started when we were envisioning the value of this kind of strategy.
Just a quick time check. We have about 4 minutes left in this particular portion of our agenda. Councilor Groves, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I feel like we're kind of chasing our tail a little bit here. This is supposed to be a living, breathing document. In fact, the whole POM is, correct. So why don't we just pick a starting point and just go with it, and then we can always come back and review it if there's a problem, or 6 months or a year, and say, is it doing what we want it to do? We just need to also recognize, no matter what we do, short of pitching the whole system, there's gonna be a group of people that just aren't gonna be happy. And, you know, that's just the way it's gonna be. If we think it's important enough to move forward, and there's certainly a lot of reasons why we might end up there. then we need to make the right decision for the greater good. And, you know, I think we get confronted with that on council all the time. Special interest versus greater good. And I just think we can keep talking about this till the cows come home, still not land somewhere. And so I think it's time to finish some of the wording up and then make a decision.
Thank you, Councilor Commissioner. Like,
Just real quick, Chief Skinner, I think that's a really, really good idea to tighten it up just to Eugene, because I think that would also give the people of this community a chance to see that, that they can trust it. That it's not, that it won't get out of hand and there won't be too many people trying to sway information here or that, and I think it would keep the rumor mill a lot smaller too.
Councilor Hughes.
Yeah, so at the beginning of this discussion, you said we should keep in mind that this policy is not just for a specific company, but for whatever we end up with. So I have a couple questions based on that. Are all of these similar systems always the data is cloud-based stored?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cloud-based storage is always seen as more secure than on-premise servers.
Okay. The other thing was in G something, at 1204.3 G, it talks about how you can also use police, car descriptions. And it doesn't say any of that up in purpose and scope, and it feels like maybe it should acknowledge that that is also a way you can use the system. Is that right, G? I might have the wrong number. Partial vehicle or vehicle descriptions may be entered into the system. It feels like since we're calling it a license plate, because I assume that's what they're all called, that we should at the, you know, at the top kind of make sure it's clear how we're, you know, what this thing can do. Or
So for instance, automated license plate. Well, ALPR is just the industry standard way to do it,
Right.
but vehicle, but it does allow for vehicle descriptions.
Yeah.
The interesting part about that is that when you put in a vehicle description, you end up getting a license plate.
Right.
So, unless you're driving around without a license plate, which
you
bad
could
guys can do. I
Yeah.
mean, and they do that a lot. So,
It'd be nice to
But yeah.
mention it somewhere in the top paragraph, some paragraph.
Sure. That in fact is how the burglars, for our Asian American burglars were captured, because we had a really good color, make and model of the vehicle. And the ALPR system actually found the vehicle and gave us the license plate. Which happened to be a California license plate, if I'm not mistaken, probably, I don't know if it was a rental or if it was one of the vehicles that was given to them. To perpetrate a crime, but your point's well taken.
Yeah. And the last thing I just want to say is, I know we talked about this before, but you know, if we, just because we choose to pass this, doesn't mean that we're saying we like the system. So if some of us don't like it and some of us do, that's okay. That's not the decision we're making today. We're just saying that like, that we're comfortable with the policy as it stands, right?
Sergeant Golden and Chief. I know that we had an attempt to have a special meeting specifically for this policy. Is there anything here that the department needs for us to approve tonight? Or would you like to work some more on this and come back another time?
I think there's only, well, there's only two changes I've heard that really need to be added in here. And that is the may to will in 1204.4 subsection D. And then we can add the vehicle description thing into the purpose and scope. And I might be mistaken, if there was other stuff we were gonna correct or add, let me know.
Okay.
Can one of the counselors just tell us, like, the last meeting, the work session was interrupted and information wasn't gathered, and that was one of the reasons why I didn't want to vote on the policy last month, because you guys were waiting for more. I thought they'd be responsive and make changes, which they have done. And, so what is your status in terms of,
We're waiting for this to come back. Yeah, it's,
like on a calendar basis, I mean? Yeah,
Yes, I mean, there's three of us who never got to ask our questions. Now, I've asked my questions, I talked with the chief specifically about it, but
I think our goal was to try and find some time during our work session this next week, actually, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if I got on that schedule or not. We were supposed to be on the schedule for the 10th of November. That got moved. I don't know if I'll see you next Monday evening or Wednesday afternoon. To talk at least about bringing this back for discussion. And what I was hoping to do at that time is to be able to come and say, Police Commission has had a chance to review the first iteration. Because I think there'll probably be multiple iterations, but the first iteration of an ALPR policy. That we would all agree is a living document that can be changed as we learn more, if in fact the system is salvaged. At this point, that was what my hope was, is that I could bring that piece of information to all of council.
So, I mean, I had a meeting with the city manager just a couple days ago. My understanding is it would not be coming back very soon.
Oh,
But that may have changed because things change in the city sometimes very quickly around our agenda, so.
That may have changed, that may be the most contemporary information. My understanding is that Sarah wanted to make sure that this happened before her departure.
yes, that's what I.
But I don't know if that's I don't know if it's gonna make it on the calendar or
The
not.
cameras are off, so, I think that some of the urgency is not quite the same as it was before when they were still on.
Guess it depends on whose urgency. you're talking.
That's true.
It's-
That's true.
It seems the only other question that was left open, and I'm sorry to keep on ragging on this, but is where to restrict it to, who we share with. And if I've asked several questions, I've gotten really good answers, and I still am unclear on one point. If the choice was between Lane County and just Eugene, what would be the advantage or disadvantage to this department of the one choice or the other? What would you lose by excluding all of Lane County for automatic and requiring them to request it, as opposed to doing all of Lane County and not just Eugene?
Well, I guess the question is, maybe there's some assumptions. We exclude our data from them, but we still get access to their data. That's likely that's not gonna be a reciprocal agreement. So I would say that we don't have access to Springfield and Lane County's data.
Could you request it?
We would have to request it just like they would request ours. So it would be, from an efficiency standpoint, it would be a little less efficient.
It'd be up to a couple hours delay.
Could be. You never know. You never know. Okay. I would hope not, but you know.
Right, is there a motion to approve the policy as amended?
So moved.
Second, okay, debate. Commissioner Lodge.
I think the cameras are turned off. I think this issue of restrictiveness is the one that we have not settled on, I'm coming down on Lane County agencies with flock, reciprocal data sharing agreement, everyone else has to ask, like, I'll propose that as an amendment, if you guys wanna go forward this evening, if you don't, I'm perfectly comfortable. Like, it was legitimate last month when the cameras were on to say they should have some policy that's operating, and we blessed it, I suppose, or we voted on it. But there are no cameras operating, and so, if we want to debate and take more time and get that restrictiveness piece in it right now on the fly, we can do that, or we could wait and take it up. And the other piece of that is that this commission shouldn't just become the perpetual flock license plate reader review committee, on a monthly basis. So our time is limited, so.
Council Groves.
I know we're past our 4 minutes, but thank you, Chair. I think we need to go ahead and just make a decision. And, it's one of those, feel like on the council side, we'll wait to see what the police commission does. The police commission side, we're kind of waiting to see what council does. Somebody's gonna make a decision. And so I think let's start here. And personally, I agree. I'd like to start with Lane County. Let's see if we have a problem before we make one. And then we can always come back and address it. If we have a problem, we'll deal with it.
As your chief of police of 7.5 years, I would like this commission to make a decision. surrounding the recommendations by Commissioner Lyman so that we can codify that in policy as a starting point. And our commitment is to bring this back as often as we feel like it needs to be brought back in the event that we have some experienced transgressions. But at this point, we have no experienced transgressions.
Commissioner Espinosa.
Commissioner Brady, can we vote on that so that that's the starting point?
So is the request for an amendment to the initial motion?
The Commissioner.
Yeah,
Lyman-
so some Roberts Rules person helped me, but there is a motion, it was seconded, we're in discussion, and I'm moving to amend the policy to include that the data sharing be with Lane County block participant agencies, and that the data sharing be reciprocal, and that everyone else, Lane County and others, have to ask.
Second,
So the motion is
there's
acceptable to
an
the.
amendment that's been made, and we have to vote on the amendment.
Make it friendly.
Right,
friendly.
I'd be happy to make it a friendly
Okay,
amendment.
I made a second, so I'll accept this if nobody else said that.
Okay, all right. So we're voting on the amendment right now, to the amendment to restrict ALPR technology to, Lane County agencies.
We're voting on
That
the
are
whole,
block
whole motion.
participants.
Oh, okay, and the parts, very good. All right.
The policy is not specific to FLOG. so
No, ALP, but I'm saying not, so
It has to be in the.
this is an example, I could be wrong, if Cottage Grove doesn't have block, they have to ask. If Florence has block, they're in. If it's reciprocal, if they're allowing us in, if they're not, then they have to ask, that's the intent of the.
Sergeant Jordan, is that all?
Can I ask the minutes recorder if this, Pam, is this clear?
I'm not gonna repeat, I mean, I'm not a stenographer.
Right, but I mean, are you feeling you're pretty clear on?
Oh, yes, I am clear on
Right.
that, the amendment first and then the motion.
So it's a friendly motion, I mean, to amend, it was accepted by the initial person to make the motion. And so now we're at the point where we're ready to vote, unless there's further debate on the original motion as amended, to accept the policy with the 3 revisions. Does that sound okay to you, Jack? All right, all in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All opposed, please signify by raising your hand. And of course, it's unanimous. I will also vote affirmatively. Motion passes. Thank you all. I appreciate the hard work on this one. We'll move on. Next up, we have officer response to calls 416. Sergeant Gordon, go.
Okay. So this is back from last month. I have a subject matter expert here tonight. And I don't necessarily want to lead you through all the changes because there were a lot. This was kind of completely reworked. You can see it's kind of a messy markup copy. So I don't know the best way to this to maybe, I want to get feedback and see what we all think, and then also have a chance to hear from our subject matter expert on offer response to calls, so.
What, so we looked at it last month, then we talked, but we didn't really engage it. We had some back and forth, but what prompted all the change, just curious, you revisited it and decided that
Okay.
it was time for, yeah.
Yeah, so the policy was a little overdue for revision, I think. Let me pull up real quickly. I forget the last time it was edited. 2014. So we're in that frame of needing to be looked at, needing to be revised. And then secondarily, it was just a very different policy than I think we would want in terms of some of the things just needed to be updated. This just wasn't how we did business anymore. And some of it needed to encapsulate some of the new ORS language, some of the existing ORS language, and then also, I mean, that's pretty much what changed. I did mirror it to some other agencies' policies because they had some really good detailed language about it. So we just kind of did those updates as well.
Thank you, and this is gonna sound snarky, and it is not, it is not intended that way, but that is precisely like. Come to us with the policy, having done that thinking, and come to us and say, here's what we had in 14, and here's what we're proposing.
Yeah.
But when we took this up last So we spent time in looking at it and it's right, it's everything that you wanted it to be, but we could not provide that to you, right? So it's just a good example, I think, in a non-snarky way of saying, like, come to us with what you want. Show us the difference between what we have, and then we can tell you like, oh, that sounds like a good idea, or it sounds like bad, you know?
Yeah.
And if that's helpful, if it's not, I'm sorry.
And it didn't change terribly, from last month's to this one.
Okay,
Just little tweaks since
Okay.
then, so,
all right,
And that didn't feel snarky at all.
thanks.
So, good job.
Thank you. I have the ability to tell, so.
Other questions, concerns, errors, or omissions you all would like to talk about?
I guess I'm kind of just curious if anybody has any questions for our subject matter expert in terms of. If any of this is new information to you, I know some of you have done the police academy and haven't, some have been around UPD and, you know, as we function out in the streets. And so I don't know if anybody has any specific questions about code 1, code 2, code 3, that's kind of the nuts and bolts here, and then the rest is just everybody's job and what they're supposed to be doing with that, so,
Think about every police show you've ever seen and
yeah.
see if this matches with what you're experiencing.
1 out of 12. Okay. So.
I guess, thank you, Chair. I think in a similar vein to what Commissioner Lyman was saying, it would be helpful for me to understand from our visiting expert. If there's like a narrative arc that is helpful for us to understand as we're looking through this and, you know, considering it, you know, like what do you find to be the best changes that have been made or necessary changes that have been made or any opportunities for debate based on your experience with other departments or other department policies? That'd sort of be my question to you as opposed to knowing specifically what to ask.
Yeah, so my name is Nate Pesky. I am a sergeant with Eugene Police. We're in the traffic safety unit and I'm the supervisor of the emergency vehicle operations team. So we do all of the driver training for the police department and basically anybody that touches a police department vehicle. So we provide all the basic training for that. So I was asked to come here to be the subject matter expert on this, and I guess I should tell you some of my background. I've been in police work for going on 27 years, 24 of which have been at Eugene Police. I am a senior instructor at the Police Academy and emergency vehicle operations. Been doing that since 2007. Actually, 2006. I've been working actually for the Academy for the state of Oregon since 2007. So I've been on our EVOC team since 2006. So I've been around for a few years and seen some changes in the way we do things, the way we operate, some policies, a lot of technology. So this is a policy that I think I would argue could use some updating, but in my opinion, it wasn't far off from where we should be to begin with. So a lot of this, in my opinion, was wordsmithing and kind of cleaning things up and perhaps taking out a little bit of ambiguity. But in reading some of the footnotes, it sounds like there was a lot of ambiguity and question from you folks. So I don't know if there's anything that I can answer that would clarify some of your questions, or am I on the right track here?
Yes, you are absolutely right. And I guess I would add to answer Commissioner Neal, the definitions that were added is probably the biggest change. And I don't know, I don't think there's anything that before was, you know, there and now we've changed it and it's to be debated. It's just more detailed now. And so I don't know if there are specific questions about those definitions and understanding what code 1 is, code 2 is, code 3 is. Obviously, we always have concern when we have officers driving very fast through our city. That's a liability. That's why this is important. And that's why Sergeant Pesky is the expert in terms of educating our young officers and our brand new officers and doing that the proper way, using this policy among other things. And so that's kind of, does that help?
Yeah,
Okay,
no, that's
perfect.
helpful, just to give us sort of some brackets around where
Yeah.
you think we might. And to hear your comment also about, or hear you suggest that the commentary about changes related to questions that we had previously, so that's helpful.
Oh, Commissioner Reed.
Yeah, could you illustrate some examples of? Am I correct in understanding that a code 2 is essentially a code 3 where it's better to be discreet and not use the lights and siren? And therefore, going through traffic has got to be done a little differently, but that you are urgently trying to get there as fast as is safe to get there. That's the essential difference.
But yeah, that's accurate. So a code 2 response, the way we teach it is, it's the same as running code 3 with lights and sirens, but it's a covert response. So that may mean different things for different people based on time of day. A response from this side of the city to, say, Timberline Drive. There's a burglary in progress. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're gonna have to go lights and sirens until you're maybe a few blocks out, or maybe at 18th Avenue. But at 3 o'clock in the morning, you may be running a covert response with no siren until you get to 6th, just because of the way sound carries. But and a lot of that, I've seen comments on this also about judgment. It comes down to the judgment of the officer, and sometimes officers run with their siren longer, which I love as the EVOC sergeant, because it decreases our liability and it increases the safety to the community and the officers and everybody. But then there's somebody up at the scene that's saying, hey, whoever's coming, turn your sirens off because we can hear it all the way up here, just because of the way sound travels. So being too restrictive on when that kind of stuff happens, I think can be dangerous for us. Really at the heart of all of this and what we teach and what we drive home is due regard. You always have to drive with due regard. It doesn't matter what you're justified in doing, how fast you think is appropriate for a situation. If you're not driving with due regard, you're doing it wrong. So we can't be creating another emergency when we're trying to go resolve the one we're headed to. So the use of emergency equipment always comes into question. I always encourage, look, if you're justified in an emergency response, turn on your lights and sirens. We don't generate complaints from the public when there's a car going with lights and sirens. We generate complaints from the public when there's a patrol car going 15 or 20 miles over the speed limit with no indication that they're going to an emergency call. And people have a tendency to kind of fill in the blanks as to why they're driving that fast. You can, I'm sure, imagine some of the comments and responses for that, but we teach to err on the side of caution of just using your emergency equipment. That's you're legal and justified in doing so. Use it. It's going to keep everybody safe.
Other questions? Commissioner Lund?
Oh, no, I'll make a motion unless there are.
We have a motion. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say in the second paragraph under code 2, for consistency, I would just capitalize code.
Sounds good, yeah.
Commissioner Lund?
I was gonna move, that we approve policy 416.
Very good. We've got a motion and a second to approve policy 416 as amended. Is there any debate? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All right, and it's unanimous. 416 is approved. Thank you all. We'll move on next to
Yes.
letter. Policy 411.
Okay. So, I believe that this was on the list that was set in May potentially at your work retreat. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but we had already revised this back in January, but I thought it's still important for us to bring it to the table. Obviously, I don't have any changes to recommend, but I think it's worth a look through for that purpose. And I also have a subject matter expert here, Sherry Nelson, who manages the community engagement team, who oversees the administration of this program. And so, guess I'll leave it at that, unless, I guess, should I do a little brief intro on what trespass letters are? Okay, so, or would you like to do that? Sherry?
That's fine.
Okay,
So,
perfect. Thank you.
a little back history. So I'm a supervisor for community engagement. I recognize a few of your faces from our Citizens Police Academy. I also do all the Shop with the Cop, National Night Out. We manage a lot of programs within our units, and I know some of your folks here actually recognize some of my crew. We have specialists that work throughout the community. One of our programs that we manage is a trespass letter program, and kind of to date me a little bit, I started back here in 1998, and I managed the trespass letter program where we have to do it every year. Like renew the trespass letters every single year. So what changed is we now renew them every 2 years, and it's only for commercial properties. And the reason behind that is it's private properties is not open to premise. So if someone's coming to your house, that's your own private property. So there's no reason to have a trespass letter on file. But if you own a business or a commercial property, that's where this trespass letter comes into play. And so layman terms is you're giving EPD blanket permission to come onto your property on your behalf to either cite, move someone along, or arrest them for trespassing on your property. And what's required under this policy is that you, as the property owner, have to have proper signage on all 4 sides of the building. You can stencil it, you can put it up high. People always tear them down. And then you sign this paperwork that's online. We actually have a form on our EPD website where you can go on, and I have it if you guys want to take a peek copy at it. Is you go online, I automatically fill out the form. It comes to our inbox, so it's a fillable e-form, and then we enter our trespass letter into our database, into our Smart First program, and our officers and our dispatchers have immediate access to that to be able to verify if a letter is on file. Once that letter is getting close to expiring 1 month out, so 30 days prior to expiration, an email will go out to that property owner, notifying them they have 30 days to renew their letter. If they choose not to renew their letter is now expired. There are certain policies within that the property owner has to comply with, such as proper signage, making sure they're willing to prosecute. And also there are certain points where some people who are part of the program that have allowed people to congregate that are violating code. So then we've also revoked their trespass letter as well. And then so I have a program specialist, Jeff Blonde, who manages that program. And he is very active with business owners and property owners calling us on a day-to-day basis about this.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this program. I've been pushing it very hard in my ward with the help of Janina Racker. And we have quite a few issues that got much better, at least on our end of town. So thank you for that. But there's a lot of business owners. In fact, I was coming tonight prepared to make a case for extending it longer than 1 year, because I'm still hearing they're getting kicked out of the system after a year. And so, I mean, it's secondhand information, but I've heard it from multiple businesses. And so is there something, I'm wondering if there's something they've done that's gotten them kicked out.
So what happens, this is what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. An owner, I'm going to use a bank as an example. Management changes hands left and right. So a manager leaves to go to a different bank. That owner basically signed that paperwork, and they get that email that now goes to that email address that is no longer valid. And so now their letter is no longer, it expires, it drops off the system. So what we're trying to do now is go straight to the owner of the building, which is hard because a lot of people are off site and they live in California, and we can never get a hold of them to get that correct email address. So we're not having to deal with that email basically bouncing back to us. So they get that notification. One thing that we are doing downtown, I know some of you are downtown, is we have a station manager down there that's reaching out to the business owners in that area to remind them, hey, just kind of that gentle nudge of your letter's gonna expire. We don't have the capacity, as you know, my team was cut. We don't have the capacity to make those phone calls and those emails. We get that automated email from ISD that goes to that business owner that we have on file. So if they're not updating our address, their email address with us, they're not gonna get it.
Thank you. That's
So it falls
helpful.
back on them to do that. So we have tried to extend the expiration, but we're going back to, are we making a false arrest? Because that person who signed that letter is no longer there. So per our city attorney, we're at the point where 2 years is the point where we're gonna stick at for right now.
I'm happy with 2 years.
Perfect. It used to be 1 year. It was awful to have to renew it every single year. And we had it, initially would be like January 31st, they had to renew by. And so 2 months, we worked really hard to get those letters. Now it is a revolving. So if you turned one in on January 1st, the next person was February 1st, we're still having to renew that every 2 years. So it's constantly moving for us.
And the reminder is good too.
Yes.
That just helps me to.
And it clearly
understand.
states it in the policy. Yeah, it states it in the policy that it falls back on that owner. Because we help them, but they also have to help us as well.
We were working on a technological fix for this, Counselor Groves and My PD Connect. That puts the ability in our business owners' hands to obviously get online, do this, which they can do now, but this will be a clearinghouse to this, but then that system will automatically send the reminders out to people. Being able to do that. So we're trying to figure out a way to get a little more efficient with that, so we don't miss somebody that felt like they had one in place, so.
I'm frequently engaging a lot of these people. It might be helpful if I understood how to coach them on that too.
Sure.
I mean, one less stop for you.
One thing that I have touched base with, I went to the chamber and we, talked there as well. We're looking at doing like a little town hall to be able to get some more information out there, because the more we can spread this program, the more helpful it will be for not only for business owners, but for our officers as well.
That'd be good on leadership.
Commissioner Reed?
Is there any sense of what proportion of persons found to be trespassing under this program are moved on, cited, and arrested? And the ones who get arrested, what is the outcome of that?
Okay, I'm gonna only be able to go off of what our crime analysis Ryan Skiles provided me. I did make copies for you guys if you wanted that. But I thought it'd be important because I had a feeling, Jack, you would ask me this question. I wanted to make sure that I was prepared. So I'm gonna go from, this is January 1 of this year to November 1st. I want to kind of just go through, I'm gonna get to your question. So obviously, as you know, trespassing is one of our highest crimes right now. Year to date, we had calls are down 1,000 calls versus 2024. They decreased by 13%, which is good, meaning that we're enforcing it more. We're moving people along. We have the city prosecutor and district attorney on our side on that piece of it. It's obviously seasonal. Typically our highest volume is going to be October to March, those really horrible months, those rainy months for us, because it's wet, it's cold. Beats 5, you guys know what Beats 5 is? Like basically you're looking out, Beats 5 and 6 are going to be like your River Road, your North Eugene, your 99, all that Bethel area. Those are our hot spots. Those are going to be our highest calls for service on that. 40% of those calls are in that area. Beat 2 makes up, which is your downtown area, is going to make up 29% of those calls. In basically the third quarter, the number of trespass calls resulting in charges increased by 81% since 2024. So I can't tell you how many were, but they've increased as far as we're responding to those calls. We get a lot of complaints like, well, it took our officers 3 to 4 hours to get there. As you know, it's like a lower priority call, but now it's depending if there's additional crime in progress, how the caller reports it. I can't tell you exactly how many were cited. I can just know that at this point in time, 81% they've increased since 2024. We're getting to those calls quicker. Chief Skinner made it our purpose to be able to deal with this, is so we're dealing, because as you know, business owners are leaving because of this situation. So we're hitting it really hard. My team's seeing the effect of it. We're also doing the additional patrols of moving those folks along and giving them garbage bags and saying, get out. So I don't have the answer to that, but I know I could get it to you.
Okay, I would look forward to seeing.
Yeah, so but the point is 81% of our calls have gone up to that because of the increase of what we're trying to do.
Commissioner Lund?
Thank you. Chair. I'm trying to remember why we, at our retreat, wanted to talk about this. I'm speculating that it was, unhoused issues, like that this goes right, it's the intersection of unhoused and police response, and that's probably why we did. I don't think you can really, I'll date myself, I was a city prosecutor in 1998 and dealing daily with trespass issues, this has just been a tried and true program. I mean, it's absolutely necessary, and the real nuance of it is not so much in the trespass letters, it's in the policy and appropriate police responses to the encounter, and when to charge and when to try to move along. But that is not covered by the existence of the letter, but the idea of taking away the police ability to enforce for private business owners that are asking for it, it would be, to me, beyond contemplation.
That would keep my.
No, I don't think that's why we put it on. I don't think we were thinking, should we have this program or not, I just think that, the real details are in the police encounter more than in the existence of the letters.
Commissioner Neal.
I have a question about this. Thank you, Chair, for related to my role on the Civilian Review Board, which is having seen a couple of cases that we looked into related to this kind of interaction. I guess I wonder if you have, we've never looked at a complaint related to this policy, but I wonder if like this policy could come up for complaint and could be used in terms of an allegation toward people responding. Like if there's any things that we want to look at in that regard. I'm just looking at like the responsibilities of officers to make sure that all of the information is correct before they do anything. And whether that's feasible on site in the way that it's written, or if you have experienced that difficulties related to that. So that I think I agree with Commissioner Lyman. I'm not interested in revoking this kind of policy or making significant changes, but I would be worried if there's any language in here that would lead to policy violations for officers just for doing their job.
So I'm gonna use Summit Bank as an example. Summit Bank's manager signed a letter in 2024. Now Summit Bank manager's gone. They arrive for a trespass letter. They'll ask for the manager. That person's not on that letter. That officer's still gonna ask that manager if they want to prosecute. And then at that point in time, absolutely, we want to prosecute, and they're gonna move on. So then what would happen is we'd send them a new letter. So we're still gonna get that enforcement piece by that officer asking, do you want to prosecute? And they're responding because the crime is progress. And so for me, we haven't had that complaint at all. Our complaints are sometimes we don't get there fast enough, or a letter falls off the system. That's what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And that'd be more probably a Sergeant Pesky question on, someone who's sworn, because I don't carry a gun, so I don't get to do that fun stuff.
Would this scenario occur where officers respond just like on their own volition, without being called to the scene, like they're patrolling downtown, for example, is where we see this happen a lot. And they think that there's a accurate, record on file, and there might be signs on like two sides of the building, but not on every side of the building, and they, do some enforcement, and then following that, there's a complaint from the person from anyone related to the like nuance of not having four signs or signs on every side of the building. I guess that's where I'm wondering if there's like risk.
Yeah,
Officers.
let me just jump in here. So officers are not gonna take action unless they have probable cause to take action. I mean, probable cause standard, they will evaluate all those things and say to themselves, they respond to so the answer is yes. I'm encouraging self-initiated activity. When you know that there's a property that has been plagued from trespassing, that you know that you've got a trespassing limit on. That if you have that discretionary time to stop and you try and remedy that. Now, the remedy for that isn't always just an arrest or a citation. It's just giving people a reasonable amount of time to pack their stuff and leave and be able to do that. And so officers are gonna do that. If officers get there and they establish, oh, I know I got a trespass letter on file, but gosh, there's no signs on it. And so that prosecution is gonna be really tough. That doesn't mean that it's free game to trespass. You can still move them along. You can still ask them to move them along. And likely we get compliance and I'm gonna make a guess, but it's in the 90th percentile that we get compliance that people are moving along. Very rarely are we arresting people specifically unless there's other crimes. And what happens is many people that we engage in with criminal trespass, when we identify them, they have complimentary warrants, which then force us to take them into custody. But for just the crime of trespassing, which is a Class B misdemeanor, if I'm not mistaken, dating myself here, Class B misdemeanor for this particular property, they'll establish whether probable cause exists and then take the appropriate action. Warning and move on, citation, or under rare circumstances, custodial arrest. Yeah, I think there's a variety of different case-by-case evaluations that happen with the officers. This policy is in existence just to set a standard by which we can take action. If this is all met, we can take action with ever having to have conversation with property owner. Because if we had to wait to have a conversation with the property owner every time we needed to take action, we'd never be able to take action because of the absenteeism.
Sorry, Drew, I think I saw your hand.
Oh, I mean, it kind of dovetails nicely there and also responds to Commissioner Rady. The nice part, I say nice part, about a citation for trespass citywide, it automatically goes to community court now. If that's the sole offense or if it's paired with other community court eligible charges. So we are still able to connect people with that resource, which it is a resource. And if you haven't visited and seen what community court's like, I highly recommend it. And so that's a diversionary program and it does a lot of good for the community. So that's all I'll say.
And lastly, I would just say, many of these encounters also involve substance use disorder, and our deflection program is tremendously valuable because these are the qualifying crimes for deflection program as well. If you're under them, or if you're in possession of controlled substance, you're eligible for deflection if it's just trespass or other low-level crimes. So I don't ever want this police department to be seen as heavy-handed in this area, but we do have a crime reduction goal of approaching of trying to combat our criminal trespass because it is the #1 call for service we have in the city.
Other questions, concerns, errors, submissions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve policy 411?
So moved.
Motion, is there a second? Second. Very good, we have a motion and a second. Is there any debate? Seeing none, all in favor of approving policy 411, please signify by raising your hand. It is unanimous. Thank you. Appreciate it. That is the last item on our agenda before closing comments. Chief, would you like to go first, sir?
Oh, no comments from me.
Commissioner Rady, oh, that's right.
Couple things. Commissioner Lyman noted something that I want to read earlier that I wanted his, I think his opening comments that I would like to reinforce and slightly argue with, of course. The armed mass thuggery that we see in our nation's streets claiming to be law enforcement, and the National Guard patrolling in their numbers up and down the streets, should not be mistaken as having in any way similarity to law enforcement. And I have had the good fortune in the last few days to see at least 3 videos of officers in Hartford, in Chicago, and one other place, going off on ICE officers, telling them to get the hell out of their neighborhood and start obeying the law. And I find that incredibly encouraging. Other than that, I would just note, I'm really pleased with the response on the trespass letters about what the outcome of officer intervention in these cases is. And I have, on some of the ride-alongs, I've seen it, and it's consistent. And because when you come down to it, in many cases, the crime that is being committed is the person has nowhere to sleep and has chosen a doorway. Last night I went to the movies, saw several people sleeping in businesses' doorways to get out of the rain. And if moved along, where would they go? And officers have pointed that out to me when they were moving people along, saying, where are they gonna go? You know, the next block, which is in fact where they will go. But I understand. That's all.
Thank you. Commissioner Bertrand? You have any closing comments, sir? I'm sorry, I think you're muted.
I'm sorry, no further comments.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner, Dunn.
I just wanted to say I appreciate having a specialist here. It's really helpful. So.
Councilor Groves.
Thank you, Chair. I'm grateful we got some things done tonight.
Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Sergeant Jordan, for all of the work you did on all of these, and thank you to our subject matter experts. Appreciating the work tonight.
Which one?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for running this meeting, and thanks to all our EPD participants tonight. It was robust, it was productive, it was responsive. We're getting get a groove here at the police commission. It'd be nice, so thank you.
Councilor Eugene.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Great meeting, and I just I like the layout. Thank you for working on this. I think this is, it's gonna be great going forward.
Commissioner Espinoza-Blanton.
I felt like it was a wonderful time spent here. I appreciate all of you with all the time that I know that you're doing behind the scenes and coming here and hashing this out with us. And it's a wonderful vision of this town. I think it's great.
Commissioner Neal.
Yeah, I have two things to say related to anyone who may or may not have been watching or will watch the video in the future from the public, because I know that I have a neighborhood meeting next week about block cameras are on the agenda. So I guess I want to reiterate what Councilor Ye said, is that there's all sorts of societal questions about surveillance and questions about, like, you know, what tools should we use for public safety? And while, you know, I sort of have a certain perspective as a personal person, I think this policy does a good job of protecting public interest related to those tools that we are using or plan to use in the future. I'm sure City Council will have many more members of the public come to comment on your meetings. As I mentioned, at our neighborhood meeting, it will come up next week. So just to say that that discussion, I guess, is ongoing until a decision is made, sort of at the City Council or City Manager level. And then, yeah, on homelessness, just to reiterate what Commissioner Rady said, you know, this is the issue that has been a part of all of the work that I've ever been a part of related to public safety, which is all in Oregon. So maybe there's, you know, a narrative there, but I do think it's not a police issue only. It's a community issue. It's a society issue that we have not figured out how to solve. And I try to do my work at affordable housing, and we're all trying to do what we can do. But it's really disheartening to, you know, think about that we're implementing strategies just to move people along. Like, that is what we have to do, but we really need to figure out a societal solution that's bigger than that. And that's not for us to solve at the table, but I just want to mention that because I know that my community members will be upset about this policy, but I do support it, and I think that's what we have to do.
Thank you, Commissioner. I know better than to get in the way of the end of a meeting or between someone and their meetings. I would just like to say thank you to Commissioner Brady for giving voice to those experiencing poverty and homelessness. So thank you. I agree. Is there a motion to adjourn? So move. Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All right, motion carries unanimously. Thank you all. It was a pleasure. 5-2.